Welcome to this video in the Steps Method Concepts series. Today I'm going to discuss discovered attack. So a discovered attack can only happen when there is a battery. So when two pieces are on one line and the back piece is indirectly already attacking a target, and then the front piece has to find an additional target. And if we look to the coverage of a discovered attack throughout the chess steps, step 2 we start just with an introduction, and then in step 3 there's first one chapter about a discovered check and a double check. And so the back piece target is the king, and in the case of a double check, the front and the back piece target is the king. And it leads to mate or material gain. Then in step 3 plus there is a chapter where there are diverse targets of the front piece. And then as of step 4, of course, we go from 3 to 5 ply. And we are going to prepare the discovered attack before they happen. So today I'm going to focus on the step 3 plus, the diverse targets of the front piece, and then setting up the discovered attack, so step 4 and later. So here we have the first position. Black is to move, and of course the targets, we have 3 targets in the step method. It's material, king, a check, and the mating square. And to find the mating square, we had this rule that we make 2 moves with the same color and find a mate. In this position, let's have a look what's going on. The king on h3 is attacking the undefended rook on g4. But if we do our trick of 2 moves with the same color, we can see if we clear the line for the queen, for instance with bishop f6, then queen h5 would be checkmate, or for that matter bishop d4. And we found that the battery is actually the queen and the bishop, and we have to find a second target for the bishop. And of course in this position the second target would be the queen. So in this case it's a square plus material. And this is the traditional, you could say, discovered attack. And after queen takes h4, queen h5 is checkmate. So now we go to this step 3 plus, where the target of the front piece is not material or the king, but it is about the cooperation between the back piece and the front piece. So of course we have to identify the battery, and in this case of course we see the bishop on e8 looking at the queen on b5. So the indirect target of the bishop is the queen, and then we have to decide where the knight will go to. And in this case, right, we can see that after the move knight b4, the knight takes away the squares d5 and b3, the escape squares for the queen, and the white queen is trapped. So talking about the roles and the targets of the front piece, in this case it was not material or the king, but in this case it was taking away squares of the target of the back piece. In this case, of course, what is going on? Let's have a look. Black is again to move. The rook on c3 is under attack, and the battery that we have is the bishop on b4 and the rook on c3. What is the target of the front piece in this case? Again, it's about the cooperation, and black will play rook c4 because it's very important with any discovered attack to check whether the back piece is actually properly defended. And after rook c4, the queen on d2 is trapped and will be lost. This is the last one from step 3 plus. Again, black is to move. The battery looks to be the rook on d8 and the knight on d5. So what is the target of the knight and the rook? The queen on c3 is spinning the queen on d2, and black has the surprising move knight e3, and after queen takes c3, rook d1 mate. So when we go back to the original position, we see that in this position actually the rook on d8 is indirectly attacking the queen on d2, but also the square on d1, and that proves to be the decisive factor, because after knight e3 the threat is queen takes d2 or rook takes d2 for that matter, and when the queen takes on c3 it allows a mate on d1. Okay, now we're going to the step 4 and higher exercises. And so we have to first establish a battery, and that means that it can be that we have to position the back piece or the front piece, or that we have to create the target. In this case, it's kind of surprising. Can you find a way to set up a battery? So the battery does not exist and we have to create it with a preparatory move. Of course, when we do the orientation, we see that the G file is completely open. And but a lot of players would find it difficult to find the move rook g8 because it's hanging the queen on e1. But after queen takes e1, black has the double check. So this was also a separate chapter in step 3. And after a double check, the only defense that white has is moving the king. So you cannot interpose, you cannot capture. There are no other defense mechanisms than moving the king. The only square that white can go to is rook to h1, and after rook g1 it is checkmate. Again, we have to prepare the battery. The battery doesn't exist yet. Can you find a way to prepare the battery and at the same time also chase the target to a square where it will be subject to a discovered attack? So bishop f5, attacking the queen on e6. The queen has only one safe square for one moment, which is queen f7, and now we have the discovered attack bishop h7 check, and this is a discovered attack on the king plus material the queen on f7. So we made a preparatory move to position the front piece, but at the same time position one of the targets, which was the queen. The king was already a target, so this is in the end a classical example of a discovered attack. Let's continue. So take a moment to think about the move here. Black is to move. You can always see that next to the square h1, and how you would continue. When you look at this position, probably you will spot that there are two pieces undefended on the white side. How can we take advantage of it? And a lot of players would start here with looking at how they can activate the bishop on g7, because the bishop on g7 is indirectly looking at the knight on c3. And they consider a move like e4. So my question to you, the idea is e4, the knight moves, and then the knight on f6 goes to d7, attacking the rook on b6. Is that the right continuation? We have to be specific and not say, okay, the knight moves, and then we play knight d7, and we either win the rook on b6 or the bishop on c3, but we have to be specific and say, what is the strongest reply of the opponent? Verify, which would be knight d4, and then after knight d7, it becomes a trade and the position is equal. So what do we do in the step method when a combination doesn't work? We see if changing the move order is beneficial. And in this case, what means changing the move order? We start with the second move first, and the second move was the knight to d7, and after rook b4 we play e4 and the combination works. So what is going on here, right? So we have an endgame and there is no battery inside, and black threatens to play h2 followed by h1. So just to give an example, if white would play g5, then black promotes. For some players, they would start in this position to really figure out which direction are the pawns actually going. Well, in this case, the pawns are going down, and we see that the major threat of black is to play h2 h1 or h2 g1, and rook on d1 is undefended. So how to defend against this? So it might look interesting to play bishop b7, because then after h2 we can take on c6 and then take on g2 and everything is fine. But black activates his king in support of the pawns, and after bishop takes e6, e4, and then rook e1, king f2, it's still black who is winning. So unfortunately that doesn't work. But how can, in this position, actually a battery do any good? So if you want to find it for yourself, pause the video. And white has the surprising bishop f1, right? And now, of course, the major threat is, like, if we just say, like we did in the previous example, that the king is going to help. King f3, bishop takes g2. We just give up one piece and then we run with the g-pawn, and we can give the rook against the g-pawn on the next move, and the white g-pawn decides the game. So that is the idea of white. But of course, after bishop f1, black can promote, and now we see the discovered attack with bishop d3, king plus material. But in the starting position, the battery did not exist, and this was a creative way to stop the advances of the two black pawns on g2 and h3. Another preparatory move is luring the target. So in this case, right, I mean, you see that the queen on d3 and the rook on e2 are on one diagonal, and that makes the move bishop a6 interesting. The question is, does it matter what the move order you play the moves in? Because you can say, I play bishop a6, the bishop takes on a6, followed by bishop takes h2, and I win. The queen on h6 against two bishops, or I can play bishop takes h2 immediately, followed by bishop a6. So can you see which of the two continuations is the right one? And again, the move order is very important in this example. So we lure the target, but after bishop takes h2, white has a resource, which is queen a3, because by taking on h2, the rook on f8 has become undefended, and after bishop takes e2, queen takes f8 is checkmate. So the right continuation is bishop a6 immediately, and then after queen takes h6, we have our discovered attack, king plus material. Our final example, this is from step 5. I think it's very beautiful. There is no battery yet in the position, but with one move it is immediately clear that white has a winning battery. Can you find the move for white that creates a winning battery? And the move is rook f5. What is the threat of rook f5? The threat, of course, is to play on the next move rook h5, and the king on h7 has to give up the defense of the queen on g6. And the queen has no squares on the board where it can hide against a discovered attack. And for instance, if the king says, let me get out of here, then white wins the rook on a8 that had been undefended, and also wins the game. So I hope you appreciated this introduction to discovered attack. And there were two elements that we discussed today. The role of the front piece can be more diverse than just finding a target like material or the king or a square, but it can also be taking away squares, helping to trap a piece, so cooperating with the back piece. And the second thing we did is going to the higher level steps and prepare a battery when it did not exist yet. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope I see you again.